Welcome to The Connection Code, a podcast where we explore the relationships that make your life and work just a little bit better.
Hi, I'm Rachel Gilman-Rischel. I'm the founder of 3PR. I love working with startups and food brands, but also connecting people who I think should know each other.
And I'm Gina Anderson Cohen. I started a health and wellness media company called A Sweat Life that tricks adults into making friends through fitness. And I'm also working on an event space and boutique hotel in New Buffalo, Michigan called Petite Acres.
Okay, Gina, today's big question that we're going to dive into is inspired by our guest, author and behavioral scientist, Jon Levy, who is a ton of fun, and I actually wish we'd had more time with. He is known for hosting hundreds of dinners that bring strangers together to cook a shared meal. And there's some other rules in place that make it special and fun. But it made me think, if you were going to host a dinner party and you had the goal of unexpected connection, who would you invite? You can have 3 names.
Okay, so I really ran with this theme, and I went with like a dead or alive kind of theme.
Okay.
Yeah. So I chose 2 who have passed on, 1 who's alive. My grandma, my mom's mom, Joanne Bergley. She's on the other side. Amelia Earhart. We actually don't know where she is. And Catherine Switzer, alive. She was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. She actually it was attempted to push her off the course. And I think those 3 women have different sort of strings to pull at, but like my grandma was I think really interesting and had this like love of reading and knowledge and curiosity. And Amelia Earhart's a badass. Like if she's there, she'd have to tell us where she went. And then Catherine Switzer, I'd love to just hear from her what it's like to be held up as a trailblazer along with Amelia Earhart. Who's at your dinner, Rachel?
You just inspired me to think of, I might add a 4th if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. You just
I'll think of a 4th while you're talking.
Okay. So I didn't know we could do dead or alive, even though I invented the question. I went with alive. Okay. And also ironically chose all women. I think there was something in my mind about like a female friendly dinner party.
Yeah.
So for connections, you can't beat Priya Parker, who I think is, again, author of The Art of Gathering. I think actually Jon's dinner parties were in Priya's book. So there's a small world connect.
Yeah.
But she knows how to host a gathering. She knows how to be a great guest at a gathering. I feel like she would really work the table. Michelle Obama, because I've always wanted to meet her and I love her books and her ethos and her way of being. And then the surprise that I don't think you would have guessed, Tina Brown, the former editor of Vanity Fair. I think she is wicked smart, so dry, so clever, knows all the gossip. I follow her on Substack. It's called Fresh Hell. She just has the best pointed takes. She is like the ultimate wordsmith. I feel like she knows everyone and everything and has lived a lot of life. And it would be a much spicier and more interesting dinner party with her in attendance. But the last ad is when you talked about being a first. I just listened to Misty Copeland on Oprah's podcast, and I think I might have sent it to you or somebody else. Probably
No, me.
My friend Lindsay Abner sent it to me. I sent it to you. Misty was so interesting and articulate and inspiring. And I realized I know very little about her backstory. So I do want to dive in, but I think she would be a lovely presence at this dinner party.
Oh, I feel like I want to just combine our dinner parties. And then, these women can just talk to each other. They can have a lot of firsts in this group. And also just a lot of like girl power. My grandma has like a very infectious giggle, so she would just laugh at everyone's adorable jokes.
You always need a good laugh. I feel like that really brings it together.
Good audience, honestly.
Yes. And speaking of good laughs, let's welcome Jon Levy. So Jon is somebody I've really wanted to talk to for a long time. So I'm so happy that we were able to get on his schedule. He's been on a media tour. He's been doing all this national press and now the Connection Code. So he is a behavioral scientist, a New York Times bestselling author, known for his work in trust, human connection, belonging, and influence, all the spaces we love to explore. Jon specializes in applying the latest research to transform the ways that companies approach marketing, sales, consumer engagement, and culture. He's worked with a ton of really impressive blue chip companies. And then he also started this influencer dinner series. And as we were deep diving, I sent you a New York Times story he was profiled in back in 2013. And I was thinking about how influencer wasn't the concept it is today, right? I mean, we're in 2013, influencers were probably more in their nascence. And he was talking more, I think, about influential and impactful people who shape culture and sort of have their fingerprints around society. So I thought it was a fascinating story. And he was a pioneering presence in this idea of bringing people together in a room to see what magic can transpire.
Here we are with Jon. Have a giggle with us.
Hi, Jon Levy. Welcome to the Connection Code.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to code connectively. That's not right.
Yes,
Okay.
obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have real things to say, but I just want to point out why you're already one of my top favorite guests, which is that you immediately pointed out that my microphone was positioned at a very unflattering angle. And I only want people in my life who tell me the truth, especially when it's about aesthetics. So thank you.
You're most welcome. I've never thought of my hypercriticalness as a favorable characteristic. Please tell my loved ones that this is actually a good thing.
Because we're not related, I receive it well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Rachel. We spent like 10 minutes off tape, I think, being equal parts trolled and loved on by Jon Levy. So that's how this is.
Jon, you jumped on camera eating a snack, which is also how I like to connect with people, is just eating as you meet them. So we're in a good spot.
Yes. So what shall we cover today? There's so many topics, I know.
There's so many. Okay, here's where I'm going to begin. I always like to thank the people who played a role in a guest coming on the podcast. So let's talk about how we met. Megan Hurley, who's my former client and friend, said there's this guy, Jon, who hosts this dinner party series, and he's coming to Chicago, and he lost his venue, and he needs a kitchen. Can you help him? And I was like, I have kids, so probably not my kitchen. But then I thought, oh, Tim Huelskamp, who runs 1440, has a beautiful kitchen. Maybe
gorgeous.
Jon and Tim should talk. And then you and Tim did, and then you hosted a dinner party there. And then I decided I wanted a chance to talk to you more.
Yeah, that was fun. Tim, first of all, has a gorgeous home. And I think he was a little shocked by the format because I assume both of you know this at this point, but just for your listeners, for the past 15 years, I've been running a secret dining experience. It's completely free to all the attendees. There's no catches or loopholes. It's just people are invited. When they arrive, they're not allowed to talk about what they do or give their last name. They cook dinner together. And when they sit down to eat, for what can only be described as one of the most mediocre meals of their life, the food's awful. They find out
in my house, yes.
They find out they're sitting with Olympians, astronauts, Nobel laureates, the occasional like princess or former prime minister or even current prime ministers, and we've hosted 4,000 people at over 400 dinners over the years, and it's been like a real privilege. It's kind of wild.
Have you had anybody? This is not my planned question, but I'm just curious now. Like anybody you just actively disliked?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. There's been like full on. So there are people that are awkward. I have no issues with them whatsoever. I consider myself awkward much of my life. And so I have like a soft spot for them. There are people who get nervous who are uncomfortable or like maybe on the spectrum and fully embrace that. Like, you know, they just don't have the social muscle to understand how to interact. But then there are people that make everything about themselves, steal all the attention, do it intentionally, and it's not from a lack of social understanding. It's because they demand to be in control. And those people are just miserable to be with because I run the dinner as a contribution to other people. And so stealing that from them is, after all the effort it goes to bring it together. I have a staff of, I think, like 6 people who work for me just on this. So it's a pretty pricey endeavor and very time consuming. And so that gets me really pissed.
Okay, so you get invited to a Jon influencer dinner. Don't be the asshole.
Yeah, it really doesn't happen very often. It's just when you reach the scale of 4,000 plus people, you're you're going to get outliers. Uh, Overwhelmingly, people that say yes to this kind of stuff are curious and delightful and a real joy to interact with.
Good. Well, I just had to make that quick detour, but let's quote Alice in Wonderland. Let's begin at the beginning. I
Mhm.
want to understand how you became a behavioral scientist. What's your backstory?
Oh, so like when did I get bit by the radioactive spider or sent to another planet by my parents because it's their Krypton is blowing up or whatever? Um,
Essentially,
yeah,
Totally.
I grew up so unpopular that I didn't have many friends. Uh, and so eventually I said, well, maybe if I understood how people behaved, then I could actually make some friends. And so I think, much like a lot of our greatest strengths are born from our insecurities, um, I wanted to understand behavior so that I could connect, build trust, accomplish the things that I wanted to. Uh, that indirectly led me to doing the dinners through a circuitous path. I try not to say words with that many syllables. You can see why. Uh, and and yeah, it's been a real pleasure. And frankly, I don't really get to do that much research these days because I have very young children, and I spend a lot of my time writing books and collecting other people's research to because there's more of it than I'll ever be able to produce.
And you talked a bit about the influencers dinner series. I'm curious because it seems like you're sort of a behavior sponge. What have you learned from the dinner series that maybe applies to friendship, parenting, and leadership?
Oh, wow. Okay. Um, So there's a few things. When you said that, my immediate response, because of Rob Reiner's passing, was to say never enter a land war with China and never mess with a Sicilian when death is on the line, which was the quote from the Princess Bride when.
Yep.
Uh, um, but the real answer is there's kind of like three or four big things that I've learned. The first is that when I started this, I was like basically 29, 30, and broke, underemployed, overweight, single. Like life was not going the way that I had imagined. I was smart and I felt like I was destined for more. And I came across a study that found that human behavior is contagious, meaning that if you have a friend who's obese, your chances increase by 45%. Your friends who do not know them have a 20% increased chance, and their friends have a 5% increased chance. And so I wanted the contagious factors, because this was also found to be true for like marriage, happiness and divorce rates, smoking habits, all that kind of stuff, voting habits. And I wanted to meet and connect with the most influential people so that it would have a positive impact on my life. So that maybe I could get a job that I liked or something like that, right? And or not beat myself up for waking up at not waking up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, because if I were friends with athletes, then instead of going to see a movie and eating a tub of popcorn, I'd go for a run with them or something like that, right? And and what ended up happening was realizing that a few things. The first is that it wasn't enough just for me to be connected with them. I needed to connect them with each other. And the reason is that it's a very weak relationship when just I know the person. But if you know them and Rachel knows them and 20 other of my friends know them, then it keeps them close to me, and their positive impact increases on my life. So people tend to hoard relationships, and they're like, oh, I'm only going to contact that person when I really need them. I'm not going to introduce them to other people because they're too valuable. No, you got it wrong. The more valuable they are, the more people in your life you want connected to them, because that's what will keep them engaged in your world. The second thing I learned is that people actually connect over shared effort, significantly more than other things. The reason we have people cook is because of this thing called the IKEA effect. We care about what we invest effort into. We care about our IKEA furniture disproportionately because it's a pain in the butt to assemble. And so when I wanted to connect with somebody, I might say, hey, Rachel, can I ask a quick favor? Can I get your opinion on something? People think that this is a hindrance, but when she actually responds, then she feels more invested into my outcomes and our relationship gets stronger. And so I have the exact opposite attitude of everyone else. If I can make an introduction, great. If I can get them to invest a small amount of effort into our relationship, even better. There's a whole bunch of other things I also learned, but I figure that would be a good pausing point.
John, you just said a few things that have completely validated my theory of life. So if nothing else, if we capped it here, I'm like, aha. So quick detour before my next question is that Gina and I love introducing people as well. And we've been doing an introduction challenge. And so like an obsessive compulsive, I've kept a list in my computer and phone of everybody I've introduced for the past 2 years. And I just yesterday introduced or made my 155th introduction for 2025.
Wow.
But what's crazy is what your point is that there's a couple people that I disproportionately introduce to. Gina gets a bunch of my introductions. Tim Hulskamp gets a bunch of my introductions. My friends Kirby and Nikki get a lot of my introductions. People I adore that I think are really good humans and will show up well in those introductions get a disproportionate amount of them, and then they become connected to each other. And I hate when people hoard relationships because I'm like, it's not a scarcity thing. People can know each other over and over.
Can I point something out to your listeners right now?
Please.
That means that if your name isn't Gina or Tim, she doesn't think you're as remarkable and worthy of introduction. If you're friends with Rachel and you are not getting a lot
Kirby
of
too. She said Kirby.
I said Kirby, Nikki.
Okay, great. So just pointing out, if you're not one of those 4 people, which I'm not on that list.
Sorry, John.
She thinks that you are less remarkable and undeserving of knowing people. Just
John, I did connect you with Tim, first of all.
No, but secondly, that's the Tim side.
I sent you a lot of food.
Yeah,
I sent you food, which is also a way that I
did.
show up.
No. I'm incredibly appreciative. I just liked the unwritten element there. You're like making it slightly obvious that we should be hurt, but not really. So
yeah, this was just like a little poke to everybody else that they're not as deserving, for sure.
Try harder.
Yeah, try.
Close the goddamn loop. Yes. Which brings me to your book.
Which is like why my attractive friends get so many introductions. Oh, sorry, guys.
Yes, I am. There's a teacher's pet situation going on, but only because they're really good at fielding the intros. Also, maybe I'm just lazy and I think of the same people over and over again. Because
it's actually, can I actually answer this one?
Yes.
There's something called the availability heuristic or the recency bias, which is that like when you're in contact or see something often, then you tend to lean towards it more, think it's more important and more valuable. And so my hunch is that the people that you just described are better at staying connected with you than the other people in your life. They probably message you more often. They may even ask more of you. You might live closer to them or see them more often. And so it's probably just an availability heuristic.
Gina, I think you're deeply special despite what John is saying about proximity.
And available.
Yeah.
You are very available to me.
What I'm saying, Gina, is that you're desperate. No,
John, I actually, Rachel, may I ask a quick sort of aside? John, I'm curious what role teasing plays in your relationships, in the research you've seen, because I noticed like I've met you 25 minutes ago and I'm seeing your love language is teasing. So talk to us about that.
It's that you two gave me permission to do it. I would never go on a podcast and do this unless we were giggling ahead of time. So I'll explain some stuff about trust that's really important. There's this tendency to believe that, Gina, if you trust me, you'll be vulnerable with me, right? Now, that's not really true the way it works is the exact opposite. It's because either I am or you are willing to be vulnerable that trust is created. And it's a predictable 4-stage process. And Gina, do you have kids?
Nope.
Rachel?
I have a dog who's trying to bark, so I keep going on
Perfect.
mute.
No, the dog is perfect. So imagine it's a few years back, and I call you up and I go, Gina, my pet just peed all over my carpet. I'm so embarrassed. I have people coming over. I have no idea what to do. In that moment, I've signaled vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
Now, if you ignore me or make fun of me, trust is reduced, right?
Mhm.
But if you acknowledge it and go, John, I totally get it. Then you say, I have a dog. It's happened to me. Get this enzyme spray, shoot it. You'll be fine. Nobody will smell anything. We're going to get through this. Then what's happened is that you've signaled you've acknowledged it. You've signaled vulnerability to the same degree. The moment I see that, trust increases to that higher level. Person 1 signals, person 2 acknowledges, person 2 signals, person 1 acknowledges, trust increases. This is the fundamental building block of trust. I drop some papers, you help me pick them up. Vulnerability loop open and closed. I say, hey, I'm scared about something. You say, oh, I got your back. I lean in to crack a joke, you laugh, right? The joke is vulnerability being signaled. You laughing is acknowledging and closing the loop. When we crack jokes back and forth, you two gave me permission by opening and closing that loop that is a acceptable and encouraged behavioral model. Now, what kept it being okay is something called, give me a second, benign violation theory. Benign violation theory works like this. Something it's funny when it crosses the boundaries of how reality should be, but in a non-threatening way. Both of those conditions have to be appropriate. So the three of us are Jewish. If I made a Jewish joke, it is crossing the boundaries of is it appropriate to say or not, but because all three of us are Jewish, then we can laugh about it. If it were somebody from outside the group making the joke, it would not be benign anymore. It would just be a violation. As we're joking around and those vulnerability loops are opening and closing, I am violating and you're violating the boundaries of new relationships. But it's happening in a benign way. And so we laugh about it and it becomes an acceptable behavior. Was
Gina
that a
actually just
fair?
has a Jewish husband, but she can be part of our Jewish jokes.
I know. I was going to jump in. I was like, I still can't make the joke.
But you can support the joke.
But I can support the laughter.
The anti-Semites are everywhere. This is
Actually, this is perfect because I've been reading Team Intelligence, your new book, and I took it to a nail salon, which is the first time that I've laughed out loud reading a business book in a public space. And I'm like, it's a real gift to be funny as you're deep diving into research. You have such an amazing tone, and you really, even in the book, acknowledge that you write as you speak. And so I felt like I was getting to know you through these pages, and your type of humor is my type of humor. So I'm guffawing mid-pedicure. But I also feel like there's a little bit of mischief I want to call out where I think you kind of love debunking popular entrenched leadership theories. Like there's a little bit of joy I'm sensing.
Oh, there's a
like,
ton of joy. No. There's nothing little about it.
Yeah.
It's
you're like 10,000 hours. Nope. Sorry, Malcolm Gladwell.
There is not. So let's start off with the overconfidence and exuberance that people share ideas and they're like, no, this is the absolute truth. Oh my God. What are you kidding me? Like, who knows if like in 30 years, if people believe half of the things in my book, right? But the key here is that like nobody's approaching this stuff with any intellectual humility whatsoever. And then the second thing is that we are all so burnt out from like the pandemic and overworking and everything that like none of us need another heavy book to read, right? Like by some academic telling us everything will be okay if you just follow these rules, because it never all works out, right? It's just completely absurd. And so I would like to say that I'm occasionally amusing, but I actually hired a comedy team to work with me on the book because I felt that it was so important to take care of the reader in the process that and I'm really proud of the work they did, and I did. Um, I really love the Star Wars stuff. That's like such a joy in the book. But yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. I appreciate it. Uh,
Yes, you made a great chicken joke about the sum of its parts, and I was like, that's the kind of joke that I like.
the chicken and the sum of its parts.
You were
Uh,
talking, there's a whole research section on breeding chickens
yeah,
for
the super
sociability
chickens,
and
Dr.
teamwork.
William Muir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the KGB chickens.
Yes.
You made a great chicken joke, or your team made a great chicken joke. But if you want to explain the situation, I actually thought it was pretty illuminating of how teams could function well via the
Mm.
lens of chicken breeding.
Yes, because that's what concerns most of us these days. Well, in
Very much
the
so.
1970s and 80s, it was there was this chicken that was created called the DeKalb XL. It was like the Ferrari or Rolls Royce of chickens. This thing could just outproduce anything. There's just one major problem, which is when you purely optimize for individual productivity, the chickens became violent and they would peck at each other trying to get their resources, and they'd peck each other to death. And Gina, it's okay. I'm not sure if you know where McNuggets come from, but these chickens do
I
die.
didn't see that. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. So it's even worse than that, but I'm not going to get into it for your audience. Um, so the what ends up happening is that the humanistic movement starts, and people are like, this is unacceptable. And an evolutionary biologist named William Muir says, well, we know how to solve this. If all we did was reward productivity, then of course they became antisocial. What we need to do is reward both pro-social behavior and productivity by breeding. So he set up these coops of crossbred chickens, and then he just weighed the total amount that they produced as a team. So the chickens had to work together. And the ones that were violent and stuff obviously produced less because there were less chickens. And the ones that were friendly produced more. And he kept rebreeding them. And eventually, what he ended up with was these super teams of chickens that just laid tons and tons of eggs. But here's what's interesting and really telling: if you pulled a chicken out of a team, it was completely unremarkable by itself. The second thing was when he put a team of these, what he called KGBs, kindler, gentler birds, uh, up against super chickens, which are these individually bred chickens, then the super team demolished the super birds. And that's because at the end of a year, almost none of the super birds were still alive because they pecked each other to death. And so it's kind of this telling example of how corporate America is set up. We keep rewarding individual behavior and hiring on pure talent and doing all the things that are actually counterproductive. Because if Rachel and I work at the same company and she wants to be in the top 10%, at a certain point, you have so much talent that the only way to do that is by making sure that I'm in the bottom 90%. So now Rachel is trash talking me more so than normal. And uh, and I look bad in front of the boss, and it becomes this toxic workplace.
It's really interesting because I think a lot of us have experienced working at a workplace where individual contributors are rewarded, and you end up feeling frustrated because the team is not a wholesome thing. And you argue in the book this exact thing, that teams are made up of a whole group of people, not just smart people. So what actually makes a group intelligent together? What makes a group smart?
So what we know doesn't work are a bunch of things. This is originally researched by Anita Williams Woolley, and she brought teams together to solve a series of tasks. And what she found was a few kind of interesting patterns. Teams that are intelligent, that solve problems quickly with the resources they have, tend to be great across all problems. So they have like a certain cadence and behavior. The second thing was that none of the things that we thought predicted intelligent team actually did. What do I mean by that? Well, we're used to saying, oh, let's get the top talent, person with the highest IQ. That didn't predict the team's effectiveness. Neither did the average IQ. Neither did how much people liked each other, which has been long held as this, like, let's get everybody singing Kumbaya and doing trust falls. The single greatest predictor was that adding you and Rachel did far more than adding me. And that is the number of women on the team was the single greatest predictor of intelligence. So, gentlemen,
Get
sorry
out.
to break it to you.
Get the fuck
Get
out.
out.
Yeah.
Get out. Rachel and I did a happy dance for the listener.
The funny thing is that it's not actually even about being a woman. It's that women tend to have higher emotional intelligence. And when you look at what allows teams to function effectively, it's more about the ability to coordinate and understand when to push a topic and when not to, and when to call on somebody who may or may not, or may have something to share, or in welcoming the new person so that they're integrated faster. And all of these things are more informed by emotional intelligence. I should point out there are plenty of men with very high emotional intelligence and plenty of women with none, but it just means that women tend to have higher emotional intelligence.
So obviously some bias on my end here, but are you saying the research points to women's ability to read the room and ensure people feel a sense of inclusivity, belonging, and psychological safety?
It sounds like you're reading from a report. Yes, I am saying that. The precursor.
I'm not. It's top of mind because there's a lot of, you might have noticed a lot of noise right now about women saying studies saying there's an ambition gap and that women want this off ramp and they're not trying to push or get promoted or move up because it feels like an unsustainable system, which has angered me greatly because I think women are very ambitious and very accomplished, but they're just kind of set up to fail because it's a lot to juggle right now.
So
But that's another conversation.
I think what one of the issues is that we keep treating genders as monoliths. Like women, I mean, if you look at the statistics on women, you'll match none of them, right? It's not a fair comparison. We keep grouping people. This isn't in my book, but there's a story that's told in a lot of pop science books about how in World War I, it was the first war with planes, and pilots kept dying at a crazy rate. And that's because they built the cockpit of the plane on the average pilot size. And then somebody went in and actually measured the pilots and found that none of them were average in any way. So like you may have gotten the legs right on one person, but the rest of his body, like where your torso is versus your legs and all that. And the moment they created adjustable seating, then life expectancy rose dramatically. Because otherwise you'd be like sitting there and your knees would be in your throat, right? Like if you have long legs, or if you're too short, you couldn't reach the equipment. And I think that we tend to look at statistics and make a lot of gross generalizations on something that we call, let's say, gender, rather than splitting it across a different characteristic. So we say women have a higher emotional intelligence. The thing we actually care about is emotional intelligence. If we hire around emotional intelligence, will we end up with more women? Yeah, if you're not sexist. It's just statistics. But it's not that we're hiring women. If I said, oh, we need more women in the room, people would be like, for what? Like, what is the actual reason, right? It would reduce you to the thing that you have the least control over. Whereas if I say, wow, Rachel, you are really fantastic at reading the room and understanding how to maneuver the unwritten rules of an organization. I need you on my team. That highlights the things that you've developed over the course of a career that make you special and valuable. That's something that you can increase your skill at, teach others. You can't teach somebody how to be a woman in any meaningful way, right? Like, so I think that we need to really cut the data in what's useful rather than what's easy to see.
And that's fair. I think I just got on a pedestal for a moment. It's not as simple as gender. It might be parents are having a hard time. It might be people at certain stages of their career. It might be millennials versus Gen Z. There are lots of ways that you could hone in. And
state by state. It could be religious affiliation. It could be, right? Mormon culture is probably very different than Islamic culture, which is very different than whatever, right? So there's a lot of ways to cut the data. And there's no doubt that you're correct, but I don't know if it's necessarily useful, because when you cut the data in that way, it becomes very hard to do anything about it, right? Like, we need women empowerment programs. Are you sure? Some companies have great women empowerment programs, some absolutely awful. So anyway, as you could tell, I do like debunking things.
Yeah. What do they call it? Contrarian? No. If
Contrarian?
someone wants contrarian, no, not a contrarian, but
Definitely, I am not a contrarian.
I would never call myself.
I would never be a contrarian.
I'm curious, if you were to give one piece of advice on forming a deeper connection at work or in friendships, what would that advice be?
So there's this funny study that found it was about asking directions. People were stopped on the street and asked for complex directions. Do you know the study, Rachel?
Only because I read it in your book.
Oh, got it. Okay. And because you got really excited.
I did, because I thought it was because I loved the tip. That's why. It was a good story.
So when they stopped and asked people directions, they overwhelmingly didn't get them. But then they tried a second strategy, which was, I'm going to ask you for the time and then the directions. And the moment that they gave the time, people were almost always getting the directions after. And it's completely counterintuitive. We think that we're bothering people when we're asking for something. And the answer is you are. And the more important thing is, that's okay. Because human beings survived because of shared effort. The way we build relationships is actually through being inconvenient. We love our kids not because, or our pets, or care about our plants or our spouses, not because they're easy to deal with, but because we've invested effort over time. It's why adopted children are loved just as much as those born to their parents, because we stay up late and care for them. And that's true for friendships. And so if you'll notice, what happens is, if I ask somebody for the time, they've invested effort, I'm viewed as somebody worthy of more effort. And the actual process, we've discussed a lot of the parts. If Gina and I say, oh, what's the time? I've opened a vulnerability loop. When you close that, trust increases. And when you invest the effort to answer that question, the IKEA effect kicks in. Now you're invested into me. I'm viewed as worthy of more effort. Now when I ask for that next thing, you are actually more likely to do it rather than less likely. Now, there needs to be a healthy amount of reciprocity. Nobody likes a pure taker. And so you wanted to know the tip? The tip is, it's okay to be inconvenient. It's okay to ask for things. It's why I kept coming back to Rachel for delightful, sweet snacks that are a joy to share with people, right? Insert ad here. Rachel, tell us about your client.
Liam on your team was very gracious. I liked working with him.
He's a nice guy. He's fantastic.
Well, Rachel, should we
do a super fast connection conversation?
Yeah, go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jon, who is the last connection you made that you would want to spotlight?
I did two. One was Leah Neal, two-time Olympic medalist, wanted to meet Neil Parikh, who's the co-founder of Casper, now has a new company. And she's like, can you intro me? And I'm like, this is such an easy one. Everybody wants to meet an Olympian. Thank you. And then the second was, I got a ask, and I'm not going to say for the specific role, but for the new CMO to recommend the new CMO for a major car company. And I was like, here's a list of 40 people to pick one from, and here are 3 that I think you should really consider. And so I think I made some recruiters some money, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's effort too.
Yeah, effort. So yeah, next question if you have one, but I gotta get out of here.
You know what? Let's get you out of here because we don't want to take too much time. We can follow up on the connection conversation later, Rachel, right? Because Jon has a heart out.
Yeah.
We loved having you on the podcast.
This was super fun.
Such a delight.
Yeah.
Jon, thanks for spending time with us. And now we have to talk again.
What a guest, Rachel.
Yes, I often feel like by the time we finish an interview, we've covered all the ground we need to for that given conversation. With Jon, I was like, no, more.
Yeah. I feel like with researchers, you just can't you can't get it all in one conversation because we just scratched the surface. Any question we'd ask, he'd like fold his hands and reveal
Yes.
a study that that illuminated the question at hand or the answer he wanted to give. So every question led to more questions.
Yes. And I know you love researchers so much, and
I
that's
do.
your domain. And I
Yeah.
love writers so much, and that's
Hmm.
something that like speaks to me. So I felt like Jon really checked both of our boxes of
Yep.
somebody we want to engage with more.
Yeah. I want to ask a question and have you nerd out with the data.
I
Um,
know we didn't even get to. I wanted to ask him about the popularity versus likability situation
oh,
because they can be mutually exclusive and have implications for your long term life. And raising middle school daughters, let me tell you that the popularity likability thing feels very salient right now.
yeah, I know. We're going to need a part two. But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure to get Jon out for a very important meeting. So make sure that you buy Team Intelligence by Jon Levy wherever you get your books. And you can find Jon Levy online, searching his name, JonLevy. What else? What else do they need to know about him, Rachel?
He has a TED Talk. He has a couple books. He hosts a conference. I don't know how you could even be considered for these dinners because they have sort of a secret society way. I think they pick the people, but
You just
perhaps you could
wait.
self submit on the website.
Self-submit. Just wait till you're chosen. That never works out.
The
Should
thing I
we
related
do?
to most was mediocre food. And I was like, that's about what I could contribute was, maybe being a great participant, but having no ability to make good food.
But you did it together.
Yes, it's a group bonding activity.
Yeah. Rachel, should we do a show and tell?
Yes. What do you have this week?
Okay, so I brought an article on location sharing.
Mm.
But first, I want to ask you, do you share your location on Find My Friends with friends and loved ones?
Definitely with loved ones. I can't say that my parents have any idea what this feature is or how they could find me.
Yeah.
I don't think Ruben cares all that much, but has occasionally used it. I'm
Mhm.
out there for the finding. I just don't know that anybody is that interested.
Okay, so I have a similar approach to it. I have a few friends who I always know where they are.
Really?
Yeah. My family, Justin, my parents, his parents are all on Find My and I'll check on them. My sister-in-law, my brother-in-law.
Wait, you'll
And
check your friends' locations
yes, I will check my friends' locations.
because you're
Just
worried?
no, more like, what are you up to? And there's actually a recent article that it was like Yahoo, but it was talking about location sharing on Find My and other platforms like that as a modern love language. And this behavior is more present in the digital natives, the Gen Z. And we would assume maybe the Gen Alpha, but we don't know because they're rejecting tech in some ways that we didn't see before. But there are people who share their location with their sort of closest, call it 25 friends. And the article says location sharing automates a set of micro updates that friends used to get through conversation. Instead of asking, are you home or are you busy? People check the map. It reduces friction and the pressure to respond constantly.
I have some feelings about
Yeah,
this.
give it to me.
I don't. First of all, so much for serendipity of like running into anybody naturally because I get it for family. I really
Yeah.
do. And especially as a parent, like I want my kids mapped on their watches. I don't know that I need to know where my friends are at all times. And I actually feel like I bristle a little bit at the idea that they would know where I am at all times. It feels a little surveillance state.
I hear
No?
you. May I give you an example when it has paid off?
If you
Okay,
were being
so
abducted.
well, of course. And last year, Justin and I, my husband and I, for our 10th anniversary, we were in Kauai, on the island of Kauai, and we had our location turned on. And two separate friends we found out were actually traveling for a group friend trip to Kauai. And they saw that we were there, staying at the same resort that they were coming to, and we were able to meet up with these friends because they saw our location on Find My.
Okay, that is amazing. But are they really good friends that you were location sharing with, or peripheral
Yeah,
friends?
they were,
Really good.
I would say top 25 for both of us. So it was one of Justin's friends. Found him on Find My, and one of my friends found me on Find My, and they were going on the same group trip.
But you hadn't talked prior.
We
Hey,
hadn't
we're going to
talked
be in
about it.
Hawaii.
Correct. I like it. I also, I will say I'm generally not hiding things from people. I don't think you are either, but I think there's a certain sense of like, I want privacy sometimes. I don't have that much of a need for privacy, but I haven't really come up against someone like having my location and finding me in the wild. So I know there's a case for perhaps not sharing your location for safety. But I do think in this altruistic view of like sharing is caring and my friends love me, so I want them to know my location. I think that's lovely. It can be used for bad.
Yes, and I can see it both ways. To be honest, maybe it's just a different form of how you post on social media. Because I remember once, many years ago, early Instagram days, Ruben and I went on a trip to Nashville and posted, and my cousin, who I hadn't talked to in a long time, who I didn't realize was living in Nashville, said, I'm here, let's get together. And so we were able to spend some time together, and that was lovely. So maybe it's a little bit like that. I don't know. This is an interesting one, Gina. I would share my location with you, but you would just see me go from my house to a coffee shop, to a bookstore, to the gym and back. So it would not be that exciting.
Yeah. But then I would also know if I checked and saw you were at the gym, I wouldn't randomly FaceTime you.
Which I don't feel like is our default setting anyways. No. But yes, I guess it gives you some parameters of when is a good time.
Yeah. Lots to think about. Okay, Rachel, what'd you bring?
I brought a little bit of a curmudgeonly article in Town and Country, and the takeaway was that people are irritated that every gathering now seems to have question prompts or a game, and that you can't trust your guests to just converse without almost... Well, that was the tension in the piece, is that some people were like, trust us that we can have a conversation without needing intervention. And then other people were saying, to be honest, I don't have a lot of faith that guests are going to stay off their phones, ask each other questions, go somewhere interesting. And so putting forward these question prompts or games or activities is their way of saying, I really want this night to shine and I want people to participate. So some cranky people feeling as though they're not trusted or socially competent. And then some hosts and other guests saying, to be honest, it takes some of the pressure off and it gives people something to rally around. So as somebody who does enjoy a question prompt and has been known to bring a deck of cards or like question cards to different things, I like it, but I guess I could understand that people are feeling a little bit overly maybe like scheduled or pushed in a direction, and it does remove some spontaneity. So perhaps to each their own, but I kind of think this is not going away anytime soon.
Well, I think we've said this before and we'll say it again. Rules make fun. And I think a run of show, guidelines, rules, questions, those sorts of elements can really help create the guardrails that allow for spontaneity at a dinner. Because if you are removing these sort of tension points that cause people to have social anxiety and maybe say no to even going to a dinner, you can allow for someone to show up and be truly themselves and impart like who they are to the conversation. I think I'm going to stand firmly in the camp of like, I get it. The people who are probably feeling overruled or too guided are probably the people who do just fine. But they're not, I would say it's not about those people. It's about the sanctity of group.
Yes. And one of the complaints is that the questions have gotten a little bit so much. The questions are not sort of natural and fun and the kind of things that open up a great spontaneous conversation, but very leading and businesslike. And someone said it feels like a LinkedIn post in event form. And then people are kind of showing off or trying to say something that's going to land a certain way. And that does feel disingenuous. So to me, if you're going to play question games, you're going to give a prompt. get a sense of, is it fun for the group? Do they want to partake? Is it going to be self-serious, or is it going to be self-deprecating and silly? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the games was an F, Marry, Kill, and this woman was very cranky about having to play it. But I'm like, with the right people, that game is a blast. Or
Yeah.
Never Have I Ever, or a Cards Against Humanity type of thing. So I think it's just matching the group and
The
the
vibe.
energy. Exactly.
Yeah.
The vibe.
We did recently for Petite Acres, we had sort of a tasting event with um, a caterer at a local winery, and it was probably all in like 2 hours with couples who had never met each other, some vendors who hadn't met the couples either. And I've been to events like this, and it's very easy to just like sit and not talk, or only talk to the people you know. So I gave people a word to choose from: joy, connection, or calm, for their last year of wedding planning. And then I made them talk to people with similar cards. But it worked, Rachel. People talked. It was warm and vibrant. I don't know. I'm team topic, sentence, or conversation card.
Yes. And you're also a team camp counselor, helping people make
Yes.
friends and talk to each other that might be
Right.
awkward otherwise. Yes. That's your gift.
Right. But I could see it. I could see it. What fun show and tell this week.
I know. I really enjoy dissecting what's out there in the world. And to your point, I mean, like, what's more fun, a regular party or a costume party? A party with no games, or a party with at least one well-chosen game? I think having some activity or something to do can enliven a gathering. Even going back to John and his dinners, there's a premise. And once you're operating
Mm-hmm.
within the premise, everybody's sort of on board. Like, I don't know your last name. I don't know what you do. And we're probably all terrible cooks, but we're going to do this thing together.
Yep.
And then to his point about the IKEA example, that you like the furniture more, that you put time into assembling, you're going to be more connected to people when you've had the experience of preparing a dinner together. So I think there's something really brilliant in that.
I totally agree. Well, this has been another episode of The Connection Code, a podcast about friends, connections, work, and everything in between. This is a production by two friends, Rachel Gilman-Rischel and Gina Anderson-Cohen. You can follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn using our full names. We'd love to hear from you there. Thanks to Jon Levy for being a guest on the podcast, and thanks so much to Ben Cleaver for editing this. Bye-bye.
Bye.